Once again, Steave from the Gamers Nexus channel is demonstrating his utmost care for the tech community. He's demonstrating his integrity and frankly his unwillingness to tolerate allowing people to get screwed over by bad information. He's created a video where he's pointed out the flaws, to put it lightly, and in my opinion, the completely unacceptable nature of the reviews being done over at Linus Tech Tips. The way that they just don't care about accuracy or giving correct information and demonstrating to me that they shouldn't exist. Well, at least shouldn't be doing tech reviews if they're not going to take it seriously and provide accurate information and ensure that you're, the intellectual integrity of the information that they're giving to people. So I did a reaction video on my live show to this video, and then apparently Linus put out a frankly passing the buck excuse type response, which I covered in the second portion in the second video that Steave put out. So I'll cover that in part 2, but I'll turn it over to Live Me to cover part 1, the video where Steave exposes the frankly inexcusable behavior of Linus Tech Tips. Thanks. All right, here we go. We are starting Steave's smackdown on Linus.
A few days ago, this clip from an LTT lab tour got a lot of attention online.
The difference between us and somebody like Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed is we test new components, new tests every time.
And then Hardware Unboxed tweeted dissatisfaction with the statement made in that tour. We didn't say anything at all, anywhere. Even though it's not actually true, they don't collect new data and new tests every single time, and it's not always necessary anyway. So when Linus went on the WAN show, we hadn't got...
What the hell do they mean by new tests every time? Do they mean they retest the old hardware again? Every time a new piece of hardware comes out? Because that would be stupid. What else could that mean?
Involved. Linus responded to Hardware Unboxed on the WAN show and then said the following.
There's a fair number of people that are talking about the whole Trust Me Bro situation, where there were some creators that it seems like you guys are... Look.
Just say it. Everyone knows you're talking about us.
It's pretty clear that not everyone in the creator space handled that super professionally. I don't obviously agree with some of the takes that were out there. I don't think that it's particularly journalistic, for example, to ignore facts, to ignore personal relationships.
It is my job to ignore personal relationships.
Ooh, smackdown.
LMG is going to make false accusations and wants to try and use personal relationships to gain favor so that we don't cover something we think is not okay. It's not going to work with us. We don't play that game. The first clip from an LTT lab tour caught
Steave's burn number 1.
our attention, but it itself isn't worth commenting on. We have something wider in scope we want to comment on, and it's simply that we believe LTT or LMG is rushing too much to hit arbitrary and largely self-imposed.
For those not familiar with all of the acronyms or initialisms, if you prefer, LTT would be Linus Tech Tips, and LMG would be Linus Media Group, which would be the parent company, I guess, of Linus Tech Tips. Or GNN would be Gamers Nexus. GN.
Deadlines that are causing frequent and sometimes significant data errors and information errors. And this conflicts with the ramping marketing surrounding accuracy and data-driven objective reviews that they're pushing for from LTT Labs. So We've decided to turn off all YouTube monetization here. We will not be placing a sponsored ad in this video. We're just going to report on serious concerns that we have with LTT and bring some awareness to these critical issues. We've been thinking on this for a few months now. We have a few main points of discussion for today. They span from raw data that potentially misleads consumers, even if unintentional, accidental, that counts too. And we have some ethical concerns and corporate connections that we want to talk about, including great ethical concerns regarding LTT's inaccurate testing and misrepresentation of a small company's prototype, followed by the auctioning off of that prototype, despite the company wanting it back for other media.
What? That's fucked up. Why would you do that? That's a dick move. For anybody else, I don't know if you guys follow both Linus and Steave like I have for years, but I've always had the impression, ever since I started watching both of them, that Gamers Nexus always had the more critical, accurate, scientific approach to reviewing stuff, and Linus was always kind of like, you know, your average tech reviewer that didn't really know his shit, whereas Steave knows his shit.
And not granting permission for the auction. Also, we're concerned about ethics issues regarding LMG's recent review of the Ponage mouse, where they failed to notice that there was protective tape over the Teflon feet to knock the friction coefficient of the mouse, followed up by a pseudo correction wherein LMG fails to take full ownership of its mistake and instead blames the product for not handholding them through the process.
That's not taking ownership in any way, shape, or form. It's passing the buck.
So removing said tape. But we'll start with the simpler stuff and then come back to this. So the marketing is strong, but exiting just entertainment and entering technical data-driven reviews and marketing on the back of that means that there needs to be proper work to back all of that up, because people are now putting a different level of faith in the material coming out, and the expectations are different. And we know these issues at LTT in terms of the rushing, the pushing employees and staff to hit deadlines despite concerns with the data or the collection of the data. We know that these come from top down, as shown in a recent LTT interview that it conducted with its own employees, where many of them stated concerns with content quality pertaining to restrictive time constraints.
Let's publish less videos.
I wish we could back off the amount and focus on quality for a bit.
More time for projects would be good.
Just allow us more time to work on a video.
We never have time for retrospection.
What the hell? Aren't you the one in charge?
It's always just, that's out. What's the next thing?
Would be nice.
That's a weird statement for the owner of the company to be making. That's your choice. How long you take on making videos, you jackass.
If the pace was lessened a little bit, have time to like debrief or look in the rearview mirror at how things went.
I don't love that we have to release so many videos. I don't know what our current count is weekly, but I know it's very high. Very rarely am I particularly proud of a video I've worked on.
And Linus's own comments recently reinforced that the company is still weighing carefully the impact of spending another half day of work on something to get it right, rather than just shoving it out the door incomplete or potentially wrong.
But it was designed for a 3090 Ti. Well, we went for gold and we tried it with a 4090. The temperature results were bad. It was clear that it wasn't making perfect contact, and so Adam was the writer on that project. What Adam asked is if we could spend more time, put the 3090 Ti on it, and get real results. And what I told him was no. Because, and guys, come on. Like, for real, okay? It's $800 US. I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time.
And that's an important indicator of mindset that comes from ownership of the company. We'll come back to that clip later though. They are rushing, and this rush is causing significant and frequent testing errors, but more importantly, it is clouding their ethical judgment.
And what I...
And not to mention the fact that when you're rushing and you just want to get videos out the door as fast as you can, you're not even concerning yourself with giving viewers accurate information.
told him was no.
They are choosing to publish sometimes known bad or known incorrectly acquired data. That's different from a mistake, which all of us do in fact make, yes. But that's part of this topic too. And so given the knowledge of a lack of qualifications when known unqualified, or the intentional forfeiture of quality and accuracy for quantity instead, it calls into question the motivations of the corporation.
Yeah, and there's no excuse for that kind of crap with a company like Linus Media Group that's making a shitload of money off of their YouTube videos.
And does in fact make it look to be bottom line centric. This is to hit arbitrary, self-imposed deadlines and uploading scheduling whose end result is misleading for consumers, and at some point it is no longer an unintentional mistake to mislead those consumers, such as with known shortcuts that reduce the accuracy of the content. Rather, it becomes intentional to do so because of the knowledge of that approach. We know some people won't like this video, and those people will leave comments enraged, citing drama as some sort of catch-all platitude to discourage this desperately needed conversation. It's their way of emoting, "I'm uncomfortable." And I agree with you. This is a very uncomfortable video for me to make. I haven't enjoyed the process of it, but this is something we feel is desperately needed, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. And it is not simply drama to talk about errors and factual testing issues in a way that hopefully brings to light the problems so that the media organization, LMG, can attempt to rectify them if it in fact wishes to do so.
I love how every time Steave or Gamers Nexus finds a company just doing a terrible fucking thing, like they did this with Asus and AMD, and every time they cover something like this, they're just like, we're hoping that the company sees this as an opportunity to improve. They don't just completely fucking shit on them. Like, this is an honorable man. This guy is a better tier of person than me.
Stand to lose a lot here. We risk pissing off people with direct and very valuable and useful to us connections to YouTube if we ever happen to need them. I don't have a connection at YouTube, really, who can help me in any way. Likewise, we risk pissing off people who are connected to LMG, and that would include large streamers who operate in a class that we can't even begin to approach. But most of all, we risk some of our viewers getting upset, but we are approaching this as objectively as possible, and we ask that you listen to the concerns we are raising and the evidence that we are presenting. Because ultimately, if Linus Media Group wants to be consumer first, then it too should want this level of transparency and should want this knowledge of the issues we are presenting today. The company is now over 120 people. It recently had a purchase or an acquisition offer at $100 million. It's helmed by a new CEO whose past includes a career in director positions at companies like Dell and Corsair. Its lab is led by a former marketing director for Asus, which was recently the title sponsor for LTX following what we believe to be a rather soft-handed handling of Asus's board and RMA issues by LTT. LMG is a big...
Yeah, that was a shit show by Asus, man. Holy shit. Trying to push the blame for fucking bad BIOS onto the consumers? Or basically void their own warranty because they were putting out bad BIOS software? What the hell? Holy shit. And personally, I've never had a good experience with Asus boards.
Company now. It has the resources to do better, and it should be treated as such. Okay, with that stance clear, we're jumping into two key categories here: bad data and misinformation. This includes unintentional or intentional. There's a bit of a gradient. Bad data is testing which is incorrect or erroneous. Misinformation is miscited specifications, for example, or doubling down on flawed testing and reporting on conclusions as if it reflects proper testing when in fact it has been shown not to. These topics will later expand for far more important ethics discussion and concerns that we have regarding sort of the corporate positioning that LMG is in now. Even with its heavily marketed debut of Labs, LMG is still consistently making errors in nearly every single review that they publish, It is okay to make errors. All of us do this.
Damn, I didn't know it was every single video. Well, nearly every single video. Holy crap, I thought it was just here and there. Wow.
In this line of work, but the concern we have is that these types of errors are in nearly every single LTT technical or review type of video. So
Holy
there
shit.
are enough errors that we can't fit them all into a normal length video. We'll cover a few of them as fast as we can to establish the premise and the concerns, and everything is from the last year only. We're starting with the missed published errors. The more troubling ones are later in the video. Let's start with the entire 40 series. LTT's 40 series reviews started with the RTX 4090, which debuted with multiple erroneous charts, but one in particular was heavily written into the conclusion of the card. That chart was for Cyberpunk, where LTT allowed to slip past them an outlier with the 4090 outperforming the 3090 Ti by 300%.
What the hell? Holy shit. What are those numbers? Like at 97 what? 87 what? Is that supposed to be frames per second?
In reality, that should be closer to 72 to 75%. We explained this previously, but that's because LTT didn't properly set their test parameters and double check that the graphic settings weren't changing due to other dependencies during test setup. This is a massive human error and
Holy shit.
indicative of poor process control. No amount of blaming the video game or blaming how its settings behave is going to get you off the hook for this. It's simply human error. That anyone could then look at this chart and think it makes any sense further indicates poor understanding of the data collected. Most of the rest of their own data was relatively consistent, so there should have been clear indicators that this was wrong. Despite being the only one they originally corrected in their comment, this wasn't LTT's only error, and that's a separate concern because it comes across as burying just how many errors there truly were by only acknowledging the obvious one or not being aware of them. Both are bad. Shadow of the Tomb Raider from that same review was even more bizarre, with the 3090 Ti outperforming the 3090 by 61%. It should be closer to 13% maximally. Once again, there's a lack of basic attention to detail, maybe even knowledge, to identify such massive errors. Moving to automation makes this even more dangerous, because now you need the skill to identify flaws through numbers alone without even looking at the screen. The trouble was just how long it took LTT to acknowledge this mistake. This should have triggered deletion of the video basically immediately when they confirmed it was erroneous. Probably a community post on YouTube, a Twitter post, and a timeline for a fixed video with corrections. But LTT waited days to fix it, and they eventually posted a comment, but they didn't even pin it until people in the community started getting mad about that. That comment that was posted also didn't disclose all the errors, just the lowest hanging fruit of them, which is Cyberpunk. And eventually they replaced the entire video in place. They didn't delete it. There's a YouTube feature that we don't have, most YouTube creators don't have, where they can swap it in place. So they did that, but only after over 1 million people saw it. And we don't believe there was enough active outreach to get in front of this bad data and alert those million-plus people that their purchasing decisions may need to be reevaluated if that data influenced those decisions. Probably there should have been a recall of the content. If you're curious...
At minimum, a recall of the content. Like, how do you not feel like you absolutely need to let your viewers know that you made a fucking giant mistake? Holy shit. Wow. Oh, man.
How we handle these issues, the point here isn't really to talk about that. We have a published set of guidelines that we follow. It is our process and our standard now that's on Gamers.Nexus. It's been there a little while. The 4060 review had enough evidence of being rushed, but one of the other pieces was this chart, where an A750 is shown to be better than an RTX 4060 Ti with ray tracing on, which no...
What? An Intel Arc A750 better than any 40 series card? Are you fucking kidding me? Holy shit. And better than the 4060 Ti by a significant margin.
Other public data seems to support, including...
And how is it that you don't notice that the card seems to have this massive gap between the 1% lows and the average, whereas no other cards have a gap anywhere near that large. Wow.
In our own, they probably remade their 4090 mistake here with applying different settings or perhaps some type of upscaling. They didn't even catch this one.
I mean, like how when you're reviewing the FPS that you're getting from a game, how do you not just have a list of the settings that you're turning on and off? Like, okay, you write down on a piece of paper this setting. This is where the setting should be. Next setting. This is where that setting should be. And then just apply those same settings every fucking card you test. That is just some sloppy ass work, if you ask me.
This is another one of the ones that I caught. In their 4060 review, we noticed that their GTX 1060 gains 20% more performance than shown in their 7600 review. That's definitely not from a driver change with a card this old, and nothing else in those charts really moved, so it shouldn't be from a methodological change either. This is clearly an error in one of the two results. That no one noticed this is beyond us. In the 4060 Ti review, they think that memory sharing between the GPU and system memory isn't a thing without rebar, which is just straight misinformation. More recently in June, LTT published its RTX 4060 review with an incorrect lane count in the spec sheet. They listed it as by 16 when it's actually by 8. In May before this, LTT previously made the same exact mistake with its RTX 4060 Ti review. This video on YouTube, they replaced it in place again using the special feature that most people don't have, but if you look at their Billy channel, you can see what the original was, which was the wrong data. In the month since, they didn't roll forward that correction. LTT had already corrected this once before, which indicates to us that they are once again lacking the proper processes to ensure learned lessons carry forward. So
wow.
Missing basic research, which once again starts to become reckless, irresponsible, and concerning.
That's just bad data keeping too. I mean, if you're keeping track of your stats back in history so you can keep charts that you make in the future updated with that information, right? Wouldn't you just have records of stats that you had?
For a company branding itself in this position. Moving to bad testing in coolers, in May, Linus Tech Tips published a cooler benchmark video. It had a number of errors that take an entire video to explain, but among them, this particular chart gives away one of the major problems because it illustrates inconsistency between LMG's own testing. In this chart, LMG has the NHD15 from Noctua in red and green, the top two bars, and then it has the Peerless Assassin in blue and an orange. Notice that for each result, the D15 is consistently a few degrees better than the Peerless Assassin in LMG's testing. This isn't the problem. The problem is that LTT's own data is inconsistent when you look at the 7700X. Suddenly, we go from a couple of degrees advantage for the D15 over the Peerless Assassin to 10 degrees advantage for the Peerless Assassin. There is absolutely no way with these CPUs that these results can deviate this much without error in the testing process. That this chart can get past someone and not trigger a removal of...
How the hell? Man, I didn't even know you could buy a cooler for a fucking graphics card that would get you, or sorry, for a CPU that would get you a 10-degree difference.
That data entry, or a...
Like, is there really that much gap in the market between coolers? Is that even possible to do 10 degrees?
Significant attempt to try and explain what happened indicates to us that LMG presently lacks the qualifications to conduct proper cooler reviews. There is no reason for a sudden surprise 10-degree delta to favor the cooler that was losing in every other test. LTT refers to the frequency reduction of 300 megahertz in one test as, quote, not enough to affect real-world performance, when actually, that's basically reducing a 13900K to a lesser CPU like a 137. That is a huge difference. So the ability to judge the data itself, once again, is suspect and concerning. LTT
300 megahertz difference in a CPU? Come on now.
Liquid cooler as worse than a downdraft cooler, then blames it on NZXT's software. We are not able to replicate this result.
Surprise, surprise, you can't replicate the error.
It runs in, quote, silent mode by default, which still wouldn't reduce it to worse than a stock cooler. And additionally, if it runs in silent mode at all, that means there are methodological flaws where they are not properly controlling fan and pump speeds for this testing, and it's not proper to just blame the product because you don't want to control your test environment and you don't want to use it the way it's designed. This point alone calls all data into all of these charts into question, and it doesn't even look like they're controlling the frequencies and voltages properly. The surface area calculation is incorrect. I made that mistake many years ago, so I get this one. Calculating the total external area of the cooler does not count the surface area of the fins, which is the area that actually matters because it's where it carries the heat. LTT says that Noctua's D15 can take, quote, anything you throw at it, and that, quote, just doesn't lose. Then they say they use it on all of their internal test benches for reviews. Then they show it thermal throttling and Cinebench testing, seemingly without realizing it, or at least without mentioning it. That it can get this close to TJ Maxx at all should immediately eliminate it from use in test benches, where you want to see how the base product performs without external variables. We're a bit baffled by how huge the endorsement was for the Noctua NHD15 given their own data, but Noctua has close ties with LTT, so that may subconsciously be influencing the interpretation. And even if it's not, it's still unfair to Noctua because now it's calling into question a positive comment because of those ties. That's why it cuts both ways when you have a conflict this deep. It's not just advertising anymore. Final point here, the Peerless Assassin was tested backwards and LTT blamed the lack of instructions.
You're gonna blame the installation of a backwards freaking CPU cooler on lack of instructions? Really? You're not capable of looking to see where the plate meets the CPU and see that it's backwards or not? Oh, damn, Linus. I mean, I understand making excuses for when you make a mistake, but they should at least be good.
But we also suspect a mounting issue given their 10-degree delta. Good lab methodology would have redundancies for redundancies to safeguard against human error or perceived instructions error. In April, LTT reviewed the Amazon Basics cooler. LTT shows data wherein the Vetri V5 is producing numbers physically impossible as compared to other coolers on the chart. As you follow along, note that they sorted the charts worst to best. One thing we noticed was the max temperature value shows a 13-degree delta against the average in their Cyberpunk chart. This indicates that either LTT is averaging data which is not yet at steady state, or it may have a bad mount or test processes. This data should have triggered additional retests, especially as there is plenty of publicly available data supporting the Vetri V5 as minimally equivalent.
Oh, this is all about air coolers. Yeah, I guess you can't have more than a 10-degree difference in air coolers. I've been using AIOs for years, so I know you can't get a huge difference from those.
To the physically much smaller Amazon Basics cooler. Moving on from...
Unless you're using one of those tiny, like, single-fan AIOs. Those, I mean, why would you even bother? Get at least a 2-fan. I use a 3-fan. First one I bought was a 2-fan.
Coolers. Last month, LTT published a labs video where they got the model of the power supply they were reviewing wrong. LTT mixed up the Thermaltake Smart 80 Plus and the Thermaltake Smart BM2, which are drastically different power supplies with different quality levels. They also mixed up the 80 Plus 115 volt and 230 volt markers on the graphs, which have different requirements for the efficiency percentage at a given load. This is something they caught after publishing, so that much is good. Pinning a correction is the right move, and they haven't always immediately done that, like we saw with the 4090 review. So that's an improvement, but they need to at least get these basic attention to detail items right. This isn't even the hard part. Besides, if you can't get this much right, then as Linus himself says,
and doing them halfway is basically meaningless.
While we're on the topic of basic errors, let's do one last one. We randomly clicked on a short circuit video to check for accuracy. There was literally no effort in finding this one, and we landed on a 5600X 3D review. The video host states, quote,
the lab put it through its paces,
indicating this is a piece that the lab specifically contributed to, which is marketed on accuracy. Within the review, LMG initially states correct 5600X 3D specs,
but it has 99 megabytes of cache.
But incorrect 5600X cache specs.
The non-3DV cache version has 36.
Then it displays incorrect 5600X 3D specs on the screen later, and it lists the 5600X 3D as having 4 megabytes of L2 cache, except the 56X 3D only has 512K of L2 per core, totaling 3 megabytes, not 4 megabytes. They also list it as having 99 megabytes of L3, except it has 99 megabytes total of L2 plus L3 cache at 96 plus 3. They then state that it's 1 megabyte lower cache than the 5800X 3D.
You only lose 1 megabyte of cache.
Despite showing a graphic that has the 5800X 3D as lower cache than the 5600X 3D. It's just a total mess, and it's complete chaos. In March, LTT published its 7950X 3D review. LTT blamed a, quote, bad CPU, and noted poor performance for the delays on the review. This entire video confused us because it seemed like they were hyper worried about getting the right answer as compared to AMD, but they should be more focused on producing their own numbers. That is, if they trust their own numbers.
AMD had every opportunity to
I don't think I would.
but when we showed them our results, they basically went, yeah, seems okay.
That's because it is okay. If you're trying to nail the exact differences down to a single % of a first-party claim, then you aren't providing any value as a third-party reviewer. AMD might as well publish its own review. It's not weird at all to have a few percentage points different, or even upwards of 30%. They make the thing. They're gonna test it in ways that benefit them. Then they said this.
So with nothing else to go on, if we had launched that review, we would have been the only outlet with a broadly negative take on this chip.
Which is also just weird because they shouldn't be worried about what everyone else is saying in a popularity contest. They should be worried about reporting the truth of their own findings and then trying to...
Or figuring out why they're the only one reporting something that no one else is reporting. I mean, shouldn't that be a red flag?
explain them if they're different. LTT noted in its email to AMD, which they show briefly on the screen, that part of their stability, quote, problem was enabling Expo without increasing VDIM, except it is normal that higher clocks and memory won't be stable without higher VDIM, VDD, and VDDQ. That's not anything unexpected, nor is it AMD's fault, nor is it new. The AMD made a GSIM menu for OC and BIOS worked at this time and is what should have been used to avoid these pitfalls, as it would auto-apply. That test processes do not account for this, check for this early, and just blindly trust whatever it is the motherboard manufacturer menu is doing is once again indicative of poor experience, and blaming the CPU is not the way out. The next brief section is for asterisked errors, which are added during productions, that's after filming and before publishing. You can't do text on the screen anymore in YouTube after you upload, so all of this is done before the upload, which means that when doing an asterisk correction, a creator is aware of that correction. However, these have to be used carefully because most people won't read them. They might just listen to the video or kind of tune it out. So these shouldn't be used for undoing criticism that was unfair. This past week, Linus Tech Tips showed an all Alienware setup with some asterisked errors in one.
How could you ever think that buying an Alienware computer is a good idea? If you're ever considering buying an Alienware computer, just send me the $5,000 and I'll figure out how to get you a better computer that only cost me maybe like $2,000 to make, and I'll just pocket the other $3,000, okay?
For instance, LTT states that the keys have, quote, stickers.
Curiously cheap printing on some of the keycaps. Look
Actually,
at this.
it's double shot PBT.
Yeah, they're double shot except where they put stickers on them.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Where do you see stickers?
And expresses disappointment.
Wait, what? I don't see stickers. Do you see stickers? I don't see stickers.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yikes.
And expresses disappointment, but the editors add a note that says, not stickers, immediately dismissing, apparently, the disappointment. In another asterisk correction, LTT states,
and a 4070 Ti, meaning we should be able to get some pretty good gaming performance out of this thing.
But the editors add an asterisk that says, not TI. For hard criticisms that are stated by the host or the reviewer, like the keycaps example,
yikes,
serves no value
Yikes.
or purpose to come to a wrong conclusion and then put an asterisk to correct it later. You either cut it or you correct it in video. And going back to those interviews, we think they're doing these corrections because they're moving so fast that they won't budget the time to go back and properly correct something, like with the new voiceover line.
I wish we could back off the amount and focus on quality.
When it's clearly entertainment, that's fine, but if you're gonna start scrutinizing something, it needs to be treated with care, entertainer or not. Last week, LMG's Tech Quickie channel covered large
Especially when you're making an assload of money doing it.
language model hardware, and within the 4-minute, 45-second video, they had an on-screen text correction from 312 teraflops to 624 teraflops, a big difference. Then they had a related correction later. This is an extremely short video. To retake 2 sentences just for audio would have taken a few minutes to send the host down to the studio. This reinforces our thesis statement that LTT is rushing its content and is pressured to maintain such high throughput that it can't slow down even for a single sentence to be reread properly, or that it is unwilling to pay for content to be accurate as long as it fulfills a good enough bar. And don't be fooled by LMG. They internally set the standard to upload at the frequency they do. It is therefore a willful decision to forego quality in order to hit the standards that they're setting. 5 more minutes is 5 minutes too many to get it completely right. That costs money. It'd be one thing if they didn't realize this until after publishing, but realizing 2 mistakes within under 5 minutes of video prior to publishing should indicate a proper correction. In April, LMG published a short circuit video that was paid for by ASUS featuring the ASUS 4070 Dual. The problem isn't the part where they refer to a $600 GPU as a, quote, budget card and then thank ASUS for gracing us with the presence of a $1 backplate.
It's got an aluminum backplate, which is really nice to see on a budget card like this.
Or the clearly biased language where they give a manufacturer a blanket statement for always being good.
It's an ASUS card, so it's going to perform great.
But rather the problem is the simple correction for a misstatement on the amount of HDMI and display ports available.
3 DisplayPort, 2 HDMI on the Dual.
They could have just cut around this. We're not sure why.
Wait. See, he said 3 DisplayPort, 2 HDMI. That's 5. I don't even see 5 ports. How do you make that mistake?
Display ports available.
3 DisplayPort, 2 HDMI on the Dual.
They could have just cut around this. We're not sure why they left it in. And all of these post-shoot, pre-publishing corrections bring us to the next set of concerns, which is an increasing amount of irresponsible actions and conflicts that we've seen emerging from Linus Tech tips. So we've been seeing an alarming amount of conflicts from Linus Tech tips as it relates to their corporate connections, their flow of money, and the potential bias as a result of those things. And we've been looking into this, maybe more of a future video thing, but some of the concerns include how Linus is personally invested $200,000 into laptop maker Framework, and yet is also covering their product and their competitors' products. LMG also has a cross-branded, again, screwdriver with Noctua, and that's being sold on their store while they're also reviewing Noctua products favorably, even when it's shown to be hitting, by their own data, 100 degrees Celsius, which becomes problematic for brands like Noctua as well, because now it is less clear if the praise is genuine or if it is biased, whether intentional or unintentional. These issues, combined with high-level corporate connections through the CEO and through the head of labs, raise...
Yeah, you should never have corporate ties to companies that you're doing reviews for. It completely invalidates your reviews, even if you are trying to be honest.
A lot of concerns about conflict, but we won't be getting into them in depth in this video. Instead, we're going to focus on the consequences of irresponsible reporting and bad data and how that influences the purchasing decisions of millions of people. To start with, let's discuss the implicit ethics of knowing a lack of qualifications yet continuing to operate on a certain type of content, or being unwilling to commit the time to do that content properly, especially if you know that there are flaws and shortcomings already and choose to forge ahead. We don't really see any other options here. It is either too rushed to the point of potentially producing harmful information to viewers and to consumers that they then act on, and to manufacturers alike, or the company is unqualified to produce that information.
Or both.
It's really one or the other. This one talks about the ethics and power of a review outlet and therefore its responsibility to do due diligence on a product. On June 24th, LTT published a video about a copper water block made by a small company called Billet Labs, founded just last year. LTT took one of the company's first prototypes to test, valued in the thousands of dollars for manufacturing, not counting opportunity value. In the video, the LTT team stuck this special 3090 Ti water block on an RTX 4090.
What? They put a 3090 water block on a 4090? Are you fucking kidding me? I could understand maybe a brand that it wasn't meant for. Like, okay, it's meant for this brand and you accidentally put it on that brand, but it's the same tier of graphics cards, like a 3090 from one brand versus a 3090 from another brand. But you can never take a water block from a fucking one series card to a totally different series of card. Are you shitting me? Have these guys ever put a water block on a graphics card before? Holy shit. Those things are precision milled for a specific brand and a specific tier. Oh my god. There is no excuse for something that stupid.
If this wasn't a 3090 Ti, then we don't have another 3090 Ti that we can take apart.
How the hell did we not know what GPU this thing was?
I thought it was a 3090 Ti.
So we just
You thought it was a 3090 Ti.
casually had a 4090 sitting on the shelf, clearly labeled.
Stating that it should work, despite it not being explicitly compatible.
And they said it should work? What? Components aren't even in the same place between different brands in a lot of cases, let alone different fucking generations of graphics cards.
The company did not tell LMG that it would be 4090 compatible. They told LMG that they could try to use a 4090, but Billet Labs itself had not tested one as it didn't have a 4090 at the time. Water blocks have very specific tolerances and clearances for components, so any
That's an understatement. They are specifically designed to have heat transfer in specific places.
alignment would cause poor contact to the GPU core. LMG decided to try it and continued with the video despite misrepresenting the product massively by using it on an incompatible device that it literally would not fit properly. LTT's presentation goes down the path of being irresponsible, presenting the...
That's not irresponsible. That's just stupid. That is completely stupid. Unless you know that that card was designed for that water block, you do not put them together.
Product is much more difficult to work
Period.
with than it would be if used properly. The conclusion is...
Like, it's a cool product, but it's a bad product.
It looked...
Yeah, I would say, knowing this, LTT tech reviews are a bad product.
It's great.
Yeah, it looks super cool.
Are you just saying it's bad just purely because of the price?
It's bad because it makes absolutely no sense and nobody should buy it. Most of the community is actually really amazing. But there's a vocal minority that looks at something like that and goes, lazy, out of touch, you know, whatever else. No, I'm just really experienced at this.
Ooh. You got it.
Crap! Did you put it backwards?
Get a shot of that. Look at that.
It found
What the hell?
on the basis of improper installation. This serves no...
What the hell?
Get a shot of that. Look at...
You put the fucking RAM in backwards? How the fuck are you doing tech reviews and you're putting the RAM in backwards?
It founds this conclusion on the basis of improper installation. This serves no one. It needlessly harms a small company, and this kind of behavior can kill someone's life work in a heartbeat, and it'd be based on invalid testing and presentation. One of the company founders posted below the video and stated this, quote, "We love LTT, but it was difficult to watch their criticisms when pretty much every design issue that Linus raised was done for a reason which was all explained to Adam weeks ago. None of which, I guess, was fed back to Linus. We also sent a full instruction manual that seemingly wasn't used. I think there's definitely been a major communication breakdown along the video pipeline. We assumed we'd have a chance to answer any problems that were raised and explain them before it being publicly misrepresented." LG faced some controversy from its community, at which point it replied on the following WAN show.
Shame.
Despite a complete lack of accurate or even useful testing.
Nothing would have changed. Nothing that obeys the laws of physics would have changed the conclusion.
That statement is already a reckless and problematic doubling down, considering the elimination of any possibility to change the conclusion, including a 20-degree reduction, which should change the conclusion.
If the GPU had been 5 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 10 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 20 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion.
And we're not alone in saying they should have just done it properly. At least then you have grounds to stand on for criticisms.
I also get not wanting to retest, but I do think probably just testing it with the thing that they knew it worked with in the first place probably would have made sense. Because like you're saying that.
Yeah, testing it in the scenario in which it was designed to be used might have made sense.
Test results
maybe
matter, but if it's just supposed to look cool, then it should be seated properly so it looks cool.
After about 5 minutes of rambling, the conclusion effectively was, lol, it still sucks though.
Yeah, if it's just supposed to look cool, then why are you even pointing out its temperatures and all that other shit? If the only point is to look cool, then don't even bother getting into the temperatures. But you got into the temperatures.
Linus then, after publicly humiliating and trashing the work of two guys just getting their start in business while relying on zero effort to examine the thing correctly, complains about how he'd have to spend $100 to $500 more on an employee's time to test it properly.
But I'm not... I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time sitting and engineering a workaround to a product that no matter the result, nobody should buy.
Now, we don't have any connection to Billet Labs, and that comment was offensive even to us, so we can't imagine how heartbroken they must have been. Linus, in order to protect his company's bottom line, was willing to potentially inflict immeasurable harm to a startup rather than spend, by his own admission, a couple $100 in someone else's time out of the $100 million company's coffers. Making matters worse,
which should be enough indication to any company considering working with Linus Media Group that they should not work with Linus Media Group.
In conversations with Billet Labs, Gamers Nexus learned that the company asked for the prototype back on June 28th. This would allow them to send it out to other media or use it for further development. Linus Media Group agreed at least twice to return the product. The first time they agreed to send it back was June 30th. At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its extra life.
Are you shitting me? They had a prototype. They were asked to return the prototype. They said they would return the prototype, and then they sold the prototype?
Auction event without the permission of Billet Labs. Billet did not learn of this until around
Wow.
August 11th, at which point it was told the block is gone.
That is fucked up. That's not fucking cool.
Again, this is despite LMG agreeing in late June to send it back as
That's a cool looking case. I like that case. That's really cool looking.
LMG would have no further use for the block. Billet told us that it is now stalled, as it no longer has its best prototype available for continued development. It's also missing one of its GPUs. We voiced to Billet a concern of a potential competitor, many of whom were at LTX where it was auctioned, potentially getting a hold of the block to send it off to be cloned. Whether or not this happened is irrelevant. The point is that there's a
I don't know. That seems pretty relevant if they auctioned it off to somebody.
responsibility that was ignored. The question that you have to ask as a reviewer is, am I being fair when making this type of commentary? And that's regardless of whether you are just an entertainer or you have your entertainer hat on for that video, but not the next one. And this is particularly important for anyone marketing the future of their business's success on the back of objectivity, fairness, data-driven reviews. Another example of this just popped up recently as we were finishing this video. In the short circuit video where Linus Media Group reviewed a mouse in their Not a Review, the company made strong criticisms of the friction of the mouse in the video.
This is not a smooth mouse, and that's really disappointing, especially on like a premium gaming mouse. That should be one of the primary focuses.
Ponage then contacted LMG to notify them that LMG had not removed the protective film from the feet of the mouse.
Are you serious? They didn't take the sticker off before using the product? These are just fucking endless amateur mistakes, man. Come on, let alone a company that's making millions of dollars. Millions. They were offered to be bought for $100 million. And they're just making these completely amateur-ass mistakes. Totally inexcusable, man.
Linus noted in the WAN show that the short circuit team then posted a pinned comment saying that in fact there weren't any stickers on the mouse at the time of testing and that they stood by their commentary of the product.
The bigger issue here is that our initial correction, which was posted, said, hey, no, it, is high friction, and we did test it, and there were no films on the feet.
Ponage then tweeted publicly with an abrasive statement, but one for which we can't fault them. They point out the irony of being chosen as a gift for LTX's Whaleland attendees, despite the conclusion of the video being this.
The only question that remains is, am I recommending you buy this product? No.
This, we don't think, is about buying favor, but rather the dichotomy between being chosen and then having such an egregious error unfairly undermine the integrity of the product and its chief marketing point. LMG then eventually began the process of replacing the video in place. Once again, we assume this time with YouTube's trim tool. That'll take a day or two to process. They're cutting the section about friction, but this doesn't fix the problem. They are choosing to leave the content live whose conclusions were at least partially based on massively erroneous work because they don't want to hurt their video performance. People continued to see the original until it processed. That can take a day or two, but they're willing to throw Ponage under the bus one last time by providing feedback that the stickers should be more obvious. For an end user, maybe, but an end user doesn't get paid to test a product, whether or not it's branded as a review. All of this is ethically unacceptable. They like to brand their short circuit stuff as unboxings.
We didn't notice there were stickers on the feet of the mouse, so therefore you need to fix your stickers being obvious. God damn, dude. What a fucking clown show.
In other words, not reviews. But it's disingenuous to hide behind that whenever there's a mistake. This magnitude of error is what the mouse, or in the case of the waterblock, the block is marketed on, which is either glide or thermals. And to screw the strongest marketing point through such an egregious error as not taking the tape off of the product and still leaving the video up even while processing a cut is callous to the impact that those choices have on these companies. Linus Media Group is massive. That has to be treated responsibly. There are correct actions. It should result in some sort of immediate trigger, like a removal of the video with a follow-up saying we did it again.
At least a removal of the video.
What's even more disturbing, though, is the community response every time someone has a criticism that's valid. Like when the community beat down Hardware Unboxed for voicing their concerns of LTT's testing accuracy issues, which, while not completely tactful, yes, were valid. Then you look at the recent comments, though, like this, quote, if a professional mouse reviewer couldn't figure it out, what makes you think the average consumer will find the plastic wrapper covered? Quote, short circuit is an...
Just because someone calls themselves a professional doesn't mean they are.
Review channel. It's an unboxing and first impressions channel with some labs testing. The conclusion was just David's opinion. He had more issues with the mouse than just the feet. Quote, and if your product can be unboxed by a tech reviewer who does this for a living, and that reviewer doesn't even realize there's packaging that needs to be removed before use, that's bad user experience design of the product that should...
And or that person shouldn't be making a living doing it.
...be called out as a negative. Yes, but calling it out would require...
This is why I don't go on fucking Reddit. Well, I take that back. This is why every time I go on Reddit, I hate the experience. There's nothing but fucking idiots on there pretending to be experts.
...are noticing it as a prerequisite, which a media outlet taking its time would do. Just because Ponage didn't phrase it in exactly the nicest way doesn't mean their point is invalid. The same went for Hardware Unboxed with their concerns. Ponage was defending themselves. They apparently, according to Linus, tried it the nice way first before they wrote that abrasive tweet. And it's after getting humiliated publicly a second time through the pinned response, the first one, that basically said, no, our testing was right, and then people noticed that you could see the film reflecting in the B-roll, or at least we did. They then sent that tweet out, and that it had no tact is irrelevant. So we're not going to try and pretty it up. It is unfair. It's unfair to consumers who get misled to bad purchases or not understanding the product. It's unfair to companies when there are major points that are erroneous and aren't properly addressed or handled. And it's unfair to other reviewers who actually are willing to invest the time and, yes, even $100 or $500 or whatever it takes in some cases to get it done right. And it's sad to see because it undermines all of us. They are prioritizing publishing on a fixed schedule, which they have self-imposed. This isn't, the YouTube algorithm isn't some magic thing that actually needs daily uploads. Does it help? Yeah, sure. But there's a lot of things you could do in business that would help that are maybe not the right thing to do. I'm gonna be real here. It's getting difficult for those of us who try to do things right. And we're not the only review outlet here. We're not alone in this. To wade into a product conversation, especially after LTT, where we have to tiptoe around errors they make and write scripts around it to kind of try and subtly correct it, considering the most devout part of the community's propensity to lash out like you're seeing against these two companies defending themselves. And we don't care anymore. We're just gonna say it like it is. Being new to testing, it doesn't absolve the need for taking responsibility of the content just because you're new to this certain branch of business. And they have to continue to respect the position that the company is in, especially when building the business's future on the back of Labs data. As a leader, you're responsible for what you say, and whether or not you are branded as the CEO, you still have to feel that responsibility for saying the things that are said. Linus Media Group has grown into a massive corporation. It's hired a seasoned CEO to replace Linus. It controls over 120 employees. They affect the purchasing decisions of millions of people, and they brand themselves as an unbiased, for the people outlet. And this is an admirable goal, but the reality right now is that Linus Tech Tips and LMG is acting in a careless, irresponsible way with these bad data points and conclusions, and either laziness or an unwillingness to commit that time, cheapness, whatever it is, focus on the bottom line, all of these things, these irresponsible actions, they can affect, in the worst cases, the life work of an individual, say a smaller company, or in the more common cases, it can just mislead consumers into spending money that they don't have to spend or on things they don't realize are maybe not the right fit for them because of these problems. Having deep and high-level corporate connections in companies and going easy on manufacturers while then briefly after taking their money for a corporate title sponsorship of a major convention, investing in laptop companies and covering their own products alongside competitors, these are actions that to us raise serious concerns about the objectives of the company. Is it in fact consumer first, or is it more looking at the bottom line? The fun Linus personality in front of all of it doesn't make it simply okay to do these things, to publish bad data so regularly and knowingly in some cases, like.
But it's not just bad data. It's completely misleading information. That's totally different than bad data. If you're making a couple of mistakes here and there on numbers, but if you're literally misrepresenting a product just because you didn't take the stickers off of feet and then you say it's not smooth. that's a false representation of what's actually happening.
Like with the block, and not take the time to do it properly. No matter how funny and goofy the video may be, it simply isn't okay.
It's completely fucking irresponsible is what it is.
The data matters, the consumer matters, the perspective of the consumer also matters now, viewing this company as a sort of reforged, not just entertainment company. And the truth matters. We think there's an eagerness in the less experienced employees, coupled with a lack of disciplined and experienced management to steer them in the right direction and check for mistakes. So some of this is fine if you are just an entertainer. But if you start marketing your business on accuracy and data and objectivity, like those of us who've occupied the space since the website days, then we should all be held to the same standards. We should all play by the same rules and audience scrutiny and criticisms. And likewise, we as reviewers have to hold ourselves accountable to the same standards, because again, it protects all of us from manufacturers being like, these guys don't do anything useful. So that's kind of it. This is my thoughts on this. And I want to get back to testing stuff, but it was important to us, and I hope that
it is important
before they just jumped to the OMG drama lol comments. But that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Steve. I'm so glad that there's people with integrity in the world. People with a sense of duty. You know, people that are willing to go out of their way to make sure that even other channels are honest and holding them accountable to the consumers and their customers and their viewers. I really like Gamers Nexus. It's one of my favorite channels. You do good work, Steve. I appreciate you. I hope everybody's watching this goes to his channel and gives his videos a like and subscribes. All right, and that's the end of part 1, the expose on Linus Tech tips, courtesy of Steve over at Gamers Nexus. Don't forget to go to his channel and give his video a like. I've got a link to it down below. And we're going to get into part 2, where Steve covers the ridiculous and shameful response that Linus put out after Steve released the expose. So we're going to get into that. And here we go. Thank you very much. Apparently, Linus, once again, makes shitty excuses for doing stupid things. I don't think I'm ever going to watch any Linus Tech Tip videos anymore after seeing how badly they represent products, how inaccurate they are, how flawed their numbers are. I mean, after what Steve has revealed, I can't trust Linus anymore at this point. It's sad. I mean, it's bad enough that he would put out mistakes to begin with, but then to refuse to put out corrections on those mistakes. And then when people do catch their mistakes, they just make excuses for the mistakes instead of owning the mistakes that they've made and saying, oh, whoops, we'll do better in the future, and then actually doing better in the future. No, they just make excuses for making the mistakes, and they continue to make mistakes, and they make mistakes frequently. That's inexcusable for a company that's making a ton of money like Linus Media Group. There's no excuse for that kind of crap. None whatsoever. All right, let me mark the time for our return here. We're at 2 hours and 3 minutes. All right, let's start the video.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap of the Week. We filmed the vast majority of this episode a couple days ago, but Linus Media Group, well, specifically Linus himself, has posted a response to our video, and it's not well thought out. It's pretty disappointing, honestly. So we're going to insert a section and talk about that. Then we'll get into all the other news topics for the week. Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 2 liquid coolers, now including an ARGB model in the lineup. The Liquid Freezer series has been a top performer in our benchmark for years now, and Arctic has continually fine-tuned its products even post-launch with things like kits for Ryzen, ARGB fans for new flare, and new radiator size.
But important question, what thermals does it get when you install it backwards?
The company also has its brand new MX6 thermal paste on the market now. Learn more at the links in the description below. So we posted some coverage yesterday with some concerns about data accuracy, ethics, and responsibilities of Linus Media Group. Not going to recap all of that here. You should check that video out before proceeding its necessary context. Linus hastily posted a statement about 3.5 hours after our video went live. The video...
Does he seriously use the freaking Steve Jobs? Freaking... What the hell? He uses the Steve Jobs pose?
About 3.5 hours after
Come
our video
on.
went live, the video raised concerns again about an incredibly large amount of testing inaccuracy issues, alongside what we believe to be unethical actions and just issues with responsibility as a large outlet in general. Linus's statement, it is an unhinged, unapologetic rant where he shirks responsibility and blames others. He tries to play weird semantic games like saying, quote, "We didn't sell the product, we auctioned it."
What the hell? We didn't sell it, we auctioned it. As if that's somehow better? Are you seriously trying to use a ridiculously weak semantic argument as somehow it's better that way?
Or misrepresent the timeline for when he contacted Billet Labs. He triples down on Billet Labs and says, quote, "I still disagree that the Billet Labs video is an accuracy issue. It's more like I just read the room wrong." That doesn't even make any sense. It's not the job of a reviewer to read the room and tell the room what it wants to hear. That is called a
sycophant.
A sycophant is a perfect word to describe it.
He also said, quote, "We could have retested it with perfect accuracy, but to do so properly, accounting for which cases it could be installed in, not
We could have done our job, but...
and which radiators it would be plumbed with, again, a mystery, would have been impossible, and also didn't affect the conclusion of the video, or so I thought." To be clear here, the random caps lock is not us. That's the original emphasis. I mean, we could have retested it with perfect accuracy, but to do so would have been impossible is nonsense. And it's very difficult
It is.
to engage with nonsense. I don't know what that means. Then he completely ignores the enormous video breaking errors with cooler CPU and GPU testing results and processes that sometimes wildly misrepresent the product stack. Other than the usual platitudes of "we wear our imperfection on our sleeves in the interest of ensuring that we stay accountable to you," without explaining how it happened or how they'll fix it. Look.
Wait, what? What was that? I'm sorry. I have to go back to
We're
that.
gonna talk about this today.
Hold on. We wear our imperfection on our sleeves in the interest of ensuring that we stay accountable to you? First of all, you don't admit when you've made a mistake. You make excuses for it. And two, you act like it's not your fault when you do make a mistake. You act like it's the manufacturer's fault. How is that wearing your imperfection on your sleeve or being accountable? You do neither of those two things.
Accountable to you without explaining how it happened or how they'll fix it. Look, we're going to talk about this today, but we're not going to drag this out and make a whole new standalone video about this response because they haven't added anything of substance. The response is immature, it's blaming others, and it's irresponsible to the community they've built. But we are going to talk about some of the issues in this statement nonetheless, and then we're moving on. Let's start with Billet. This is where the story is getting a little bit twisted. We saw some comments about this confirming our concerns that people would lose track of the actual timeline. First of all, we're not going to argue the semantics about an item being sold against the will of a company versus being auctioned, and being for charity, which we already said doesn't make that better, it makes it worse, because now you're roping in an innocent third party.
Good on you.
Into
because semantics doesn't change the point.
Very awkward situation that can potentially make them look bad by proxy. And secondly, this is actually what we said. The first time they agreed to send it back was June 30th. At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its Extra Life auction event. More seriously, Linus's statement, which reads, quote, "We have already agreed to compensate Billet Labs for the cost of their prototype," uses specific language to imply that this was agreed upon prior to our video launching. Following this forum post from Linus, we reached out to Billet Labs, with whom we'd already had contact, and we asked them the following. We said Linus's comment doesn't expressly say it, but it seems to imply that this agreement was made previously. Billet Labs said no, absolutely not, no, no, no. The only mention of any money to do with the prototype was our response to them after they said they'd auctioned it. And we basically said, you know, that was an expensive prototype. They didn't want us to share the exact dollar amount. Billet continued to explain their email. They said, quote, "I said, do you plan to reimburse us for this? And we heard nothing. We didn't get a response until your video."
Wow. Wow. They didn't even bother responding to Billet Labs until Gamers Nexus put out a video pointing out the fucking thing they just did. What a scumbag, dude.
That's for it. We asked Billet when it had received that email from Linus, and they noted it arrived about 2 to 3 hours after we published our video, which would have been around the same time that Linus posted the comment on the forums. So he wrote that email and he posted and then said they've already come to an agreement. But at the time he posted it, Billet hadn't responded to the email. And just for the record, we have the timeline of events, so I vetted them. And Linus Media Group did in fact agree to send the block back on June 30th, and they agreed again later, and then they followed up to tell Billet that they would have a tracking number soon, and then it was last seen at the auction at LTX. So today was the first time that Billet had direct contact with Linus. A comment from Linus lower in the forum reads this, quote, "Billet sent us a quote. I don't know or care how they arrived at the value. If they're good, I'm good." We asked them about this, and Billet emphasized to us that it had not sent Linus Media Group a quote. It noted that it had expressed a possible value of the block in frustration before our video went up, before this conversation began, after they learned that it had been auctioned previously.
And that doesn't account for the damage done to their brand or their business.
But that this wasn't any kind of quote or invoice. We asked Billet if it had anything further to share, and it said, he's emailed us. We haven't emailed back yet at the time of writing. We thank the community for the support. We stand by everything we've said publicly. Billet noted that they intend to email Linus back prior to sharing any further details. And they also spent a few minutes to express very sincere gratitude to the community. And as they don't have quite as much of a platform, I'm just conveying that to you. They were extremely grateful to the support that they've received from you all. And I do think that they felt some closure on their side. Now we get into something
Good. At least it wasn't a completely one-way train wreck caused by Linus.
important. As far as Linus's belief that we should have reached out to him first, and that not doing so somehow makes the 44 minutes of reporting any less valid, and considering the fact that he said there would have been valuable context such as, quote, "the fact that while we haven't sent payment yet, we've already agreed to compensate Billet Labs with the cost of their prototype," which, again, Linus emailed Billet after the video. And this Billet situation is exactly why. This sentence structure makes it appear as if Billet already agreed to some kind of resolution before the video. That's why it's our responsibility when doing proper reporting to ensure that the truth gets to viewers and that it's not misrepresented by a manufacturer. We don't have to reach out to corporations when we think there's a patterned behavior or that there may be a significant chance that they try to cover things up or prepare a pre-written response that could twist the narrative, and in this case, manipulate the audience. Linus willfully ignoring our valid criticisms of data accuracy and some of the ethical concerns, while then trying to manipulate the audience into viewing him as the victim, not just LMG. This was very, is bizarre. This is why we don't reach out every time. I want to be very clear. We don't have to reach out.
Steave must be a very patient and forgiving person. The language that he uses is very kind. Yeah, in my opinion, Linus is a piece of shit.
Out to corporations prior to reporting on them, period. For big corporations, we don't reach out if the issue already harms consumers or if their view is irrelevant. the Walmart PC, the Alienware PC, any number of products we buy, but we don't need to reach out because the damage is being done actively. And we don't need Linus's input or permission to make that video. LMG's videos are already affecting millions of consumers, and they have objective errors that we covered objectively, and they involved serious ethical concerns, which we raised. And rather than addressing those, he's choosing to try and distract viewers by whining about us not allowing him to comment first. And they've already commented anyway. They did it in all of these various WAN shows. We know what their comment is. We know what they think. And when there's an objective, factual issue, we don't need to reach out. The risk is to the consumer. And these aren't unreleased products. They are public videos with a lot of views. And I am exceptionally disappointed in this response. I am baffled that this was the path chosen. I don't know. I don't know how to respond to this circular deflecting nonsense. As for the rest of the sort of meandering diatribe, it's just bizarre. I really am. I am genuinely just disappointed by this. Here's one such quote. "I'm sorry I got the community's priorities mixed up on this one, and that we didn't show the billet in the best light. Our intention wasn't to hurt anyone. We wanted no one to buy it because it's
What? Our intention wasn't to hurt anyone, followed immediately by we wanted no one to buy it? And you don't think that hurts the company or the people that make that product that you want no one to buy? What the hell?
Egregious waste of money, no matter what temps it runs at." Another quote, "Will the 'it was a mistake, a bad one, but a mistake, and they're taking care of it' reality manage to have the same reach?" This is a very bitter way to admit a mistake, but my answer to that question, because it had a question mark at the end of it, is not if you are insincere and indignant about it. No. He then talks about being real people and said, quote, "Today sucks." Look, guys, I'm not going to mince words to protect my reputation amongst sort of the devout LTT supporters, and that's gaslighting. That's what it is. Like this, we're the victims. Feel bad for us. That's what that is. So it's not acceptable behavior. It is embarrassing. And here's
shameless.
Adam and I were talking about this today. He advocated for retesting it, regardless of how non-viable it was as a product at the time. And I think he expressed really well today why it mattered. It was like making a video about a supercar. It doesn't matter if no one watching will buy it. They just want to see it rip. I missed that, but it wasn't because I didn't care about the consumer. It was because I was so focused on how this product impacted a potential buyer. Bullshit. We know why they didn't do it.
I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time.
So I'll wrap this up by saying, look, we had data points in there that were completely ignored. They weren't mentioned at all in any of this. We talked about serious testing issues. We talked about methodological issues. We talked about lack of process. We talked about lack of QC. We talked about the fact that people can look at numbers that are 300% off in some cases, or in the cases of coolers, are just literally incorrect because it was backwards or installed improperly, and how they can get past people. None of that was addressed. This was a layup to say, here's our 10-point plan. Yeah, we f***ed up. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. There's an odd note in the statement about using their notes against them, like as if...
Well, this isn't the first time that Linus has basically blamed everything on someone else either.
We're weaponizing the
Like the backpack warranty shit.
transparency or something. And I want to be clear again. Like the vast majority of the significant errors I found. They're not pinned under their videos. I found them. I went and I looked at the numbers and I compared their own numbers against their own numbers. And I found those errors. Right? Like it's misrepresenting reality here and it is choosing to ignore it. So here's the deal. If LTT releases a new PR-inspired comment after this, or goes on another rant, we probably won't be responding. This was LMG's chance to take responsibility. And he's shown LMG's true colors and what he as the owner really thinks. And we're greatly disappointed at the tripling down rather than proposing future-looking solutions. And at this point, we wouldn't believe them if they released a new statement to try and undo this one, because it's clear to us what the company's owners thought of these issues. And I can't get over this quote. We didn't sell it, we auctioned it.
Yeah.
Seriously? Like that is what we're gonna open with? Got us. Whatever. We're gonna go back to the rest of hardware news. I'm gonna drop this in. That's your update. Up next.
All right, thanks, Steve. So yeah, that confirms it. I'm definitely never watching Linus Tech Tips ever again. That's sad that they'll just not only give customers and viewers bad information, they'll do a sloppy job at reviewing products and publish it, but then they won't bother correcting anything, and then they'll just make excuses rather than trying to fix their problems. And blame other people for things that they're doing wrong. That's just shameful. There's absolutely no excuse for that kind of shit. Absolutely not. I was already starting to get a bad opinion of Linus from that backpack warranty crap, but this seals the deal, man. What a turd. What a turd. All right, that's going to do it for the expose on Linus Tech Tips. It's sad to see a company that could have done well in the tech review space, and frankly did better than they should have done in the tech review space, turn out to be so bad at tech reviews. And thank you again to Steve from Gamers Nexus to revealing what's going on over there and letting us know how poorly they're doing at tech reviews, so we know not to take anything that they say seriously, and not to treat them as a group that has any intellectual integrity or takes responsibility for making sure that their customers are getting accurate information, for letting us know that Linus is an entertainer and not anything more. And another thing I wanted to bring up is in my live show, someone popped into my chat room and revealed another video that was put out, revealing that apparently one of the employees is bringing accusations of harassment and other business practices that prove even more, or that accuse Linus Media Group of even more bad business practices. So, I mean, I didn't get into that one because it wasn't, it didn't have a whole lot of evidence. It was basically someone just making accusations. So I don't want to get too far into that. Just wanted to mention it. If you wanted to jump into my live show from yesterday and watch that portion, it's right after the second video. I've got it marked in my timeline. It's not a real long video. It's just another segment that adds even more potential problems for Linus Media Group onto this. But I'm gonna leave it here for now, and if something comes up that I want to cover in the future, I'll create another video on that. But thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you watching. If you don't mind giving me a like and subscribe, it would greatly help our channel because we're a new channel. And definitely go down to the links below to the source videos and give them a like, because I believe that Steve over at Gamers Nexus is doing us all a favor, frankly, that he doesn't have to do. Tech reviews doesn't necessarily have to involve exposing bad information from other players in the tech review realm, but he does it because he's got integrity and actually cares about his community and his viewers. And again, Steve, thank you very much. We appreciate that very much. All right, I'm going to end it here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.